For 20 years, the job title had been Leo's North Star, Chief Innovation Officer at a place like Ethel Corp. Aethel Labs wasn't just a company. It was a cathedral of technological ambition, housed in a sleek, glass and steel monolith downtown that looked less like an office and more like a rocket ready for launch. They were redefining green energy systems, a purpose-driven company with stratospheric valuation. This wasn't just money. This was legacy. This was about changing the world. When the offer came through in the late summer, Leo felt a physical rush, the kind of adrenaline dump reserved for winning a marathon or surviving an accident. He was 42, professionally peaking, and finally unequivocally successful. The title was C-suite, the compensation package was obscene, and the responsibility was immense. The first 6 months were a blur of intoxicating energy. Leo would wake at 4:30 a.m., fueled by a mixture of cold brew coffee and sheer vindication. He'd arrive before sunrise, the only sound the hum of the air conditioning and the clack of his own keyboard. He was building his team, laying the groundwork for the flagship project, Project Chimera, a multi-billion-dollar initiative that promised to merge 4 disparate energy grids into one seamless AI-driven network. He was indispensable. He was adored by the board. At home, the initial glow was bright enough to hide the shadows. His wife, Sarah, was his biggest champion. "Go get him, lion," she'd say, watching him tie his custom-made tie. Sarah, an elementary school art teacher, was the true anchor of their family, managing the swirling chaos of 2 children. Maya, a thoughtful, 11-year-old artist who was entering the challenging world of middle school, and 6-year-old Sam, a perpetually messy, joyous whirlwind who believed Leo could fix anything from a broken toy truck to a bad day. The money made the sacrifices easy to rationalize. They paid off the rest of their mortgage. They started the college funds with aggressive contributions. Sarah could finally afford to cut back her hours and focus more on her own painting. This wasn't just Leo's success. It was the family's shield, the foundation of their perfect future. "It's just for the ramp-up," he'd promised Sarah, looking into her tired but trusting eyes when he stumbled home at 10 p.m. "Once Chimera launches, I'll dial it back. Then we're golden. Then I'm yours." He believed it. They both did. But the whisper of warning began almost immediately. It wasn't a shout, just a tiny, persistent sound. It was Sam who stopped waiting up. Sam, who used to patrol the living room window, would now be asleep before Leo even left the office. One Friday night, Leo crept into Sam's bedroom. Sam, sprawled under a blanket fort, opened one eye and murmured, "Daddy, are you a ghost now?" Leo laughed it off. "No, buddy. Just a working man." But the joke carried a sting, a tiny shard of glass embedded in the soft meat of his conscience. He pulled it out, rationalized it as kid talk, and promptly ignored the pain. The second 6 months were characterized not by ramp-up, but by chronic escalation. Project Chimera was a beast, a multifaceted monster that required constant feeding. The 4:30 a.m. starts became normal, but now they were paired with 1 a.m. finishes. He wasn't just working 80 hours a week. He was perpetually on call. The executive phone felt like a second skin, vibrating with existential dread in the middle of a Sunday afternoon or at the altar of a dinner table. His office at Ethel Labs became his primary residence. He had a cot stashed behind a decorative screen, a small stack of emergency clothes in a desk drawer, and a dedicated delivery account for gourmet food that he rarely tasted, inhaling it between conference calls. He was surrounded by other workaholics, a cult of exhaustion. They spoke in short, jargon-laden bursts, fueled by mutual martyrdom. They were the elite. They were saving the world. At home, the absences started to matter more than the rare presences. The family calendar became a list of events Leo missed. First, it was the small things. Maya's first middle school volleyball game, he had a sudden emergency call with the European regulatory team. Then, the parent-teacher conference, Sarah went alone, reporting back on Maya's growing talent but flagging her quiet melancholy. "She says you don't even ask her how her day was anymore," Sarah had noted, her voice dangerously even like a taut violin string. "I'm exhausted, Sarah. I'm operating on 4 hours of sleep. I'll talk to her tonight. He snapped back, the fatigue short-circuiting his emotional intelligence. But tonight never came. By the time he got home, the house was dark and quiet, smelling faintly of the dinner he'd missed. The kitchen, once the warm, brightly lit heart of their home, became a silent battlefield. Sarah would leave his plate covered in foil, the heat long gone. He'd sit there alone, a solitary, successful man eating cold lasagna, the silence amplifying the shame. One Saturday morning, Sam came to him with a complicated block castle he had built, asking for help with a turret. Leo was checking his email for the 20th time, responding to a critical ASAP from a junior VP. 5 minutes. Sam, Daddy has to finish this. Sam sat cross-legged on the floor, patiently waiting, holding the instruction manual. 5 minutes stretched to an hour. Leo finally looked up, his eyes gritty and unfocused. What is it, buddy? Sam looked at the email screen, then back at his castle. He slowly picked up the whole structure and without a word, walked away and dumped it into the toy bin. Sam, what are you doing? It's okay, Dad, Sam said without turning around. You looked busy. I'll ask Mom. That moment, the casual, non-confrontational dismissal, the resignation in his 6-year-old's voice, hit Leo harder than any argument with Sarah. His son no longer saw him as the person who fixed things. He saw him as the person who was always unavailable. The rationalizations became louder, more desperate. This is just the crunch time. This is what it takes to be truly great. Other dads are worse. He started drinking heavily at the office, a single malt nightcap with the other sea-suiters in the private lounge, discussing mergers and acquisitions until 2 a.m., confusing their shared intoxication for real camaraderie. Sarah stopped waiting up. She stopped leaving the foil-covered plate. She started sleeping in the guest room. The marital intimacy faded into a tense politeness, replaced by coded language about logistics and scheduling. They were excellent co-managers of a household, but terrible partners in a life. We need to talk. Leo, Sarah said one rainy Tuesday evening, confronting him as he tried to slip past her and into his office to just check one thing. I can't right now. Sarah, we're in the middle of a server migration and I have to... No, she interrupted, her voice steel hard. She wasn't yelling, and that terrified him more. You need to listen. You are providing a future for us, but you are not providing a present. I miss my husband. Your kids miss their father. I don't know who this man is, who sleeps in that shirt and smells like airplane cabin and stale fear. Stale fear? Are you kidding me? I'm carrying a multi-billion-dollar project on my back. I'm creating a legacy. This is for you. This is for them, he roared, pointing toward the children's closed bedroom doors. No, Leo, this is for you. Your dream job is turning into a nightmare for the rest of us. It's a mistress, and she's demanding all your time and all your energy, and frankly, I'm tired of competing with a server migration. She turned away, but her parting shot was the one that landed. You keep chasing success, but what if you get there, and the people you wanted to share it with are gone? He didn't answer. He went to his desk, stared at the urgent email, and then logged into Ethel Corp's system. The email was about a typo in a presentation slide. He worked until 4 a.m. fixing it, convincing himself that the true crisis was professional, not personal. The dream was becoming a gilded cage, and he was too exhausted and proud to try the lock. The crisis finally broke, not as a slow, agonizing fissure, but as a violent, instantaneous earthquake. It happened on Maya's 12th birthday. She wasn't asking for a party or a massive gift. She was having a small gathering, a pizza party and a movie night with her 4 closest friends. Her only request was that her dad teach them how to play the complicated 4-player strategy board game he had bought her a few months ago. Leo had promised. He'd blocked out 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. in his calendar, a sacred, non-negotiable block. He even put an alert on his phone that said, Maya, do not fail. But Ethel Labs was in full meltdown mode. Project Chimera was hitting its beta launch and the system integration was failing. A key hardware component manufactured overseas had a critical flaw, threatening a 6-month delay and potential regulatory disaster. The CEO was screaming. The board was having emergency meetings. Leo was in the command center, a cavernous room filled with flashing monitors and the smell of panic, leading the troubleshooting team. It was the moment he had been hired for, the moment where only he could fix it. At 5:58 p.m., Sarah texted him. "Any chance you can leave now?" "The girls are here," Leo replied, 5 mines. Critical patch install. At 6:30 p.m., Sarah called. He declined the call. He was on the phone with the primary systems architect. At 7:00 p.m., she texted a single word, "Please." At 7:45 p.m., the crisis seemed to stabilize, the patch taking hold. Leo wiped the sweat from his brow. "Okay, people, we hold the line here. I need to step out for an hour. Keep eyes on the core temp." He grabbed his laptop bag, feeling a sense of heroism. He was going home late, but he was coming home victorious. As he pulled up to the house at 8:05 p.m., he saw the dining room light was still on. He walked in, smiling, ready to apologize grandly, present a ridiculously expensive gift, and bask in the relief. The dining room table was set up for the board game. 4 giggling girls, Maya included, were hunched over the pieces. But they weren't waiting. Sitting opposite Maya, explaining the complex rules with calm, focused attention and a warm, steady voice, was Sarah's older brother, Mark. Mark, a landscape architect, had always been kind but was often a quiet observer in their family. Now he was the center of attention. When Maya rolled a decisive die, she cheered and high-fived Mark. The smile froze on Leo's face. Maya didn't even look up. She only registered his presence when he cleared his throat. "Hey, I made it," Leo said, trying to sound cheerful, dropping his bag with a heavy thud. Maya looked at him, her beautiful, artistic eyes wide and flat. "Hi, Dad," she said. It wasn't an accusation. It was worse. It was the tone you use for a casual acquaintance. She didn't move or offer a hug. She simply said, "We started already. Uncle Mark is teaching us. He's really good at the rules. Oh, I can take over," Leo offered, stepping toward the table, ready to perform the role of the present father. "That's okay, Dad. You look tired. Uncle Mark has the flow now. Do you want some cold pizza?" Cold pizza. Again. But this time, the cold pizza wasn't a symbol of his sacrifice. It was a symbol of his irrelevance. His own daughter had found a suitable replacement for him, a functional father figure who showed up. The sting was unbearable. Mark hadn't fixed a multi-billion-dollar crisis, but he had fixed his niece's birthday, and in that moment, only one of those things mattered. Leo walked into the kitchen where Sarah was quietly wiping down counters. "Mark is here?" he asked, his voice low and shaking with a mix of fury and self-pity. "He is," Sarah confirmed, not looking at him. "He stopped by on his way home and saw the lights on. I asked him if he could step in." "You were an hour and 5 minutes late, Leo. I couldn't let Maya down again." "Mark? My brother-in-law? You'd rather have him teach my daughter my game than wait for her actual father, who was solving a crisis that will impact millions of lives." Sarah dropped the sponge. She finally turned, and the look in her eyes was utterly devoid of affection. It was a cold, pure assessment of failure. "You don't get it, do you? Every time you choose Ethel, you tell your children you're not coming home. You don't have a dream job, Leo. You have an addiction. You're addicted to the rush, to the prestige, to the feeling that only you can save the day. You're not saving lives. You're saving systems, and you're sacrificing the actual humans who love you. You were her one request. Her one request, and you missed it." Mark showed up. "You didn't. This isn't about one board game. This is about every dinner, every recital, every bedtime. Every time Sam asks why his friend's dad has time to coach soccer and his dad has time to be in London for a week." Leo felt his own fury swell up defensively. "You think I like this? You think I don't want to be here? I work for this family. I'm the one putting the food on the— Stop!" she screamed, cutting him off with a force that rattled the dishes. "I can put food on the table. I have a job. We are not starving. We are emotionally starved. I don't want your stock options, Leo. I want you. The man I married. The man who used to teach Maya how to mix paint and tuck Sam in with a ridiculous story about a dragon. That man is gone. And if he doesn't come back," she inhaled sharply, the next words laced with venom and heartbreak, "I don't want to be here when you finally realize he is. Because I won't be waiting." She walked past him, grabbed a small overnight bag that was already packed, and headed toward the kids. She kissed Sam goodnight, telling him she was going to Aunt Chloe's house for a night of painting. She hugged Maya tightly, whispering something only Maya could hear. She came back to the kitchen, looked Leo directly in the eye, and said, "I'm taking the kids for a week. I need you to look at this empty house and figure out what is more important to you, Ethel Corp, or the family you claim to be working for. Because right now you can't have both." And then she left. The house went silent. The only sound was the faint, happy laughter of Maya and her friends being taught the game by Uncle Mark. Leo was alone, standing in the middle of the cold kitchen. The laptop bag lay at his feet. The cold pizza was waiting. He looked down at his executive phone, which was now vibrating again. Another ASAP email from the systems architect. He didn't pick it up. He dropped his bag, and for the first time in 18 months, Leo didn't move toward his office. He sank onto the floor, the glass and steel perfection of his life shattering around him. He realized that the dream job hadn't just demanded his time, it had replaced his identity. He was a machine, a cog, a highly compensated slave to ambition. He had almost lost everything of real value. The next morning, Leo didn't go to Aethel Labs. He didn't even check his phone. He woke up on the couch, wearing the same clothes he had worn for the last 2 days, covered in a dusty blanket. The house was utterly, unnervingly silent. He walked into Sam's room. The block castle, broken and discarded, was still in the toy bin. He picked up the manual. Step 1. Connect base plate. He sat down and started building slowly, meticulously, piece by piece. He worked until 11 a.m., finishing the castle perfectly, including the tricky turret. It was a pointless exercise, a hollow offering to an absent child, but the act of focusing on something tangible, something that mattered only within the confines of his home, was therapeutic. Then he went to the dining room. He collected the board game pieces, putting them back in the box. He noticed a note tucked under the rule book, written on a pink birthday napkin. It was from Maya. "I love you, Dad, but I wish you loved us more than your phone." The words weren't angry. They were sad, and that grief tore through him. He finally, truly understood the scope of the damage. He drove downtown, not to his office, but to the parking garage. He took the elevator up to the 40th floor, not to the C-suite, but to the lobby. He paused, looked out the massive panoramic window at the city, at the world he was supposed to be saving. He asked the security guard to call his assistant, Maria, down to the lobby. Maria arrived, flustered and confused. "Leo, what are you doing? Project Chimera is falling apart. We need you in the command center." Leo looked at his assistant, a brilliant, overworked young woman who was likely on the same path he had been on, and saw his own hollow reflection. "Maria, I need you to go to my office. On my desk there is a key card, a phone, and my laptop. I want you to put them all in a box. I also want you to draft my resignation letter, effective immediately. Full severance payout, no negotiation. Just cite urgent family matters and burnout. And Maria..." "Yes, Leo? Go home tonight, on time. Go see your parents. Do not answer an email after 6 p.m. He pressed his key card into her hand. He didn't wait for her response. He walked out of Aethel Labs, leaving the glass monolith, his C-suite title, and a salary most people couldn't imagine behind him. He walked out with a profound, terrifying sense of liberation. He was unemployed, a potential failure in the eyes of the corporate world, and he had never felt more like himself. The silence of the next few days was excruciating. Leo cleaned the house, truly cleaned it, scrubbing the grout, reorganizing the garage, fixing the leaky faucet he'd ignored for months. He was performing penance with manual labor, trying to fill the void that Aethel Labs had left, but the silence remained a deafening, constant reminder of his loss. On the 5th day, he called Sarah. "I quit, Sarah," he said, skipping any preamble. A long, heavy pause stretched across the line. "Don't say that if you don't mean it, Leo. Don't use us as a bargaining chip." "I mean it. I resigned yesterday. It's done. My phone is gone. I have nothing left but a ridiculous amount of severance and the knowledge that I almost destroyed us. I don't know what I am or what I'm going to do, but I know what I'm not. I'm not the CIO of Ethel Corp anymore. Sarah's voice was softer now, brittle with disbelief. Are you drunk? No, I'm terrified. I'm begging you. Can you just come home? Not to forgive me, not to fix it. Just come home so I can start trying to earn back the right to be in the same room as you and the kids. She finally agreed to come back that evening. Not as his wife, but as a temporary guest, a jury deciding his fate. The reunion was painful. When Maya saw him, she didn't run to him. She stood behind her mother, clutching her arm, studying him with wary eyes. Sam, however, did run, not for a hug, but to point at the castle. You fixed it, Dad. The turret stays on. That was the only victory he was granted. He had fixed the castle, but the family was still broken. The reconciliation was the hardest project Leo had ever undertaken. It was slow, frustrating, and without the adrenaline rush of a crisis call. He was an executive trying to learn the basic language of human connection. He started with small, non-negotiable promises. Every night he read Sam 2 chapters, no matter what. He took Maya to the art supply store and spent an hour discussing the relative merits of acrylic versus oil pastels, listening without checking his watch. He learned the names of her friends. He started making dinner. Terribly at first, burning the rice, oversalting the chicken, but he was there. With Sarah, it was a long, cold road back. They started couples counseling. In one session, Leo broke down, confessing that he hadn't known how to stop, that the status and the constant crises had become his definition of self-worth. He was chasing the validation that his own father had never given him, and he'd sacrificed his own family to achieve it. Sarah confessed that she had started making plans to leave permanently, realizing that a poor present father was infinitely better than a rich, absent one. Their therapist gave them homework, 1 technology-free date night a week, and a mandatory family hour every Sunday where Leo was not allowed to discuss work, even his new fledgling consulting business. The process was slow, filled with arguments and setbacks, but for the first time, Leo was showing up. He was present. He was doing the real work, the messy, unglamorous, beautiful work of being a husband and a father. He was failing in small, safe ways and learning to succeed in the only way that mattered. 1 year later, Leo is no longer a chief innovation officer. He is a fractional CTO, taking on short-term, high-impact projects for 3 different smaller firms. He works 45 hours a week strictly. His rate is high enough that they haven't had to touch their savings, but the volume is low enough that he has set boundaries that are now sacred. He has learned to say, "That can wait until Monday," without feeling a tremor of professional anxiety. He still uses the organizational skills he learned at Ethel Labs, but he applies them to his life. His calendar is color-coded. Green for client work, 45 hours. Blue for school events. Yellow for Sarah. Red for family adventures. On a warm autumn Saturday, the family is at the local farmer's market. Sam, now 7, is holding Leo's hand, excitedly pointing out a giant pumpkin. Maya, 13, is walking a little ahead. But when she chooses a bunch of bright red sunflowers, she turns back and hands them to Leo to hold. A quiet gesture of trust. Later that afternoon, they are sitting on the back porch carving the pumpkin. Leo is holding the knife, helping Sam guide it into a lopsided, grinning mouth. Sarah is sketching in her notebook, watching them, a small, knowing smile on her face. "You know," Sarah says, not looking up from her pad, "I was talking to Mark last week. He said Project Chimera finally launched. Took almost a year longer than planned. They brought in some guy from London to finish it." Leo paused, pulling out a handful of pumpkin guts. He felt a small, fleeting tug, the familiar phantom pain of lost status, but it faded quickly. "Good for them," he replied genuinely. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked, her voice quiet. "Walking away from the title? The power?" Leo looked at the scene in front of him. Sam, covered in pumpkin slime, laughing hysterically. Maya, leaning against the railing, reading a book, but occasionally glancing up to make sure her father was there. Sarah, sketching the moment, preserving it. This was the raw, complex, beautiful reality he had almost traded for a corner office and a 3-letter title. He scraped the last seeds from the pumpkin bowl and set the knife down. He picked up the damp, sticky hand of his son and looked at his wife. "No," Leo said, his voice firm and clear. "I regret the man I was when I had that job. I regret the time I wasted. But walking away, that was the single most innovative thing I've ever done." He wiped the pumpkin off Sam's cheek, then wrapped an arm around Sarah's shoulders. "Aethel Labs saved systems," Leo continued, looking out at the simple, chaotic perfection of his backyard. "But I realized my job wasn't to save systems. My job was to save this. This right here, this is the real legacy. This," he squeezed Sarah's shoulder, "is the dream job." And he finally understood. The dream job wasn't the title on the business card. It was the life he had fought to get back. The true C-suite wasn't at the top of a skyscraper. It was the seat at his own kitchen table, and he had finally punched in.